Have you ever caught yourself agreeing with something you hate just to avoid conflict? Shaping your opinions to fit the group? Accepting invitations you don't want just to not seem antisocial? You seek harmony but drift away from who you really are. But what if I told you that your inability to say no reveals more about your personality than you imagine? What if the answer to understanding who you are lies precisely in what you can't refuse? Machiavelli, Jung, and Erich Fromm had a disturbing theory about this, and in the next 20 minutes you'll discover what these three thinkers reveal about your personality. But before diving into this revelation, you need to be brutally honest with yourself. Look around your life right now. How many things do you do that you genuinely didn't want to? How many commitments did you take on just because someone asked? Are you living your agenda or someone else's agenda? There's a specific moment that happens inside your mind when someone makes a request. It's a split second where two voices fight. The first screams, "I don't want this." The second whispers, "But if I say no, what will they think?" And which one wins most of the time? The second. You feel your stomach tightening when your mouth says, "Sure, no problem," while your soul screams, "No." It's like there are two people living in the same body. One who knows what they want, who doesn't negotiate, and another who does what's expected, always trying to please and putting others' needs above their own. Carl Jung, in his years of clinical observation, saw patients who arrived at his office exhausted, depressed, not understanding why they felt empty, even doing everything right. They were good daughters, good employees, good friends, but they weren't themselves. This discovery was disturbing. When you always say yes, you're not being kind. You're feeding a ghost, a character created to be accepted, but that consumes you from within. The more you feed this ghost with external approval, the more you kill who you really are. You know that feeling of being at a party smiling while inside you just want to leave? You're not being polite. You're betraying your own soul. And Jung had a name for this that he developed over decades studying the human psyche. That's why he knows where this programming comes from. Now I will reveal why you prefer to torture yourself internally rather than simply say a two-letter word. There's a mental file you've carried since childhood. A file full of disappointed faces, of people who walked away, of moments where you felt the ice of abandonment, and this file commands your adult life without you realizing it. Erich Fromm made an impacting revelation studying World War II refugees. People who had lost everything would do anything to not feel again the terror of isolation, even if it meant giving up their own freedom. Fromm realized there's something more frightening than physical pain, the fear of being alone. It's a primitive terror, engraved in our ancestral DNA. Alone in nature, you died. Rejected by the tribe, you didn't survive. Your mind created a protection system. It filed every time you said no and something bad happened. Every time you displeased someone and felt that cold emptiness in your chest. Now it uses this file as evidence. Saying no is dangerous. It's better to please. In Escape from Freedom, Fromm documented how people are so afraid of the responsibility of being themselves that they prefer to hide behind social roles. It's safer to be what they expect of you than to risk being rejected for who you really are. You do this every day. When you agree to work on weekends, when you pretend to like something you hate, you're escaping the freedom to be authentic because it scares you. It's easier to be a voluntary slave to others' approval. But there are people around you who noticed this. People who studied your pattern and know exactly how to manipulate you. They discovered you have a red button called fear of disappointing. Observe the people around you who always get what they want from you. Stop and analyze how they act. They never come asking directly. They never say, "I need you to do this." Instead, they create a situation. "Wow, I'm so overwhelmed at work. I don't know how I'll handle everything." Strategic pause, suffering look, and then they wait. They wait for you to offer help because they know you will. You always offer. Or then, "You're the only person who really understands me." Done. They turned you into the hero of their story. Now, how are you going to disappoint someone who sees you as special? How are you going to say no to someone who just gave you exactly what you most need to hear? This reality became clear 500 years ago during diplomatic missions across Europe. The most influential leaders never asked for favors directly. They created situations where others offered to do favors. And the discovery was disturbing. Those who always say yes aren't generous, they're vulnerable. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote that vulnerable people are the easiest to exploit, because when you know exactly how someone will react, you can manipulate that reaction. If you know someone never says no, you can ask for anything using the right words. Machiavelli's pattern was this. People who can't say no aren't being kind. They're being strategically exploited. They became human resources available 24 hours a day. And those who exploit them know this. He realized there's a brutal difference between being respected and being used. Respected people have boundaries. Used people don't. And worst of all, those who use you will always find a moral justification for it. You're so helpful. You have such a good heart. Only you can do this right. They wrap you in compliments that are actually golden handcuffs. They make you feel special for being exploited, but the price you pay for this constant availability is much greater than you imagine. And it has consequences that go beyond exhaustion. Think of your energy as a bank account. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you make a withdrawal. Every time you force yourself to smile when you want to cry, you withdraw a little more. And what's your account balance today? Do you still have energy for the things that really matter? What Jung found in his own journey is that when you constantly live betraying your own desires, something very specific happens in your psyche. He called this fragmentation of the self. You stop being a whole person and become a collection of characters you play for different people. At work, you're the dedicated employee. With family, you're the obedient child. With friends, you're the emotional support. But who are you when you're alone? Do you still know? This fragmentation has a brutal psychological price. Research on depression showed this clearly. People reported a sense of emptiness, as if they were actors who forgot who they were when they left the stage. They knew how to play all roles except being themselves. In Memories, Dreams and Reflections, Jung described this process as a betrayal of what he called authentic individuality. The more you adapt to external expectations, the more you distance yourself from your center, and there comes a point where you can no longer find your way back. But Jung didn't stop there. He discovered something even more haunting about people who live this way. They don't just lose themselves, they become invisible to others too. Because when you never have your own opinion, when you never express preference, when you always mold yourself to what the other wants, you become boring, predictable, dispensable, and ironically, trying to please everyone, you end up not being special to anyone. But there's a way out, and it starts with the discovery Machiavelli made about real power. Here's a truth that goes against everything you were taught. People who know how to say no are more attractive, not less. They're more respected, not less loved. And this isn't theory. It's pure human psychology. During his years as Secretary of the Republic of Florence, something fascinating was revealed. The diplomats who were always available, always ready for any negotiation, were seen as useful, but never as influential, never as essential. They were competent officials, but rarely decision makers. Those who were selective with their attention, who had clear criteria about when and for whom they would be available, these awakened something different in people. Curiosity, respect, and yes, even admiration. Why? Because scarcity creates value. When you're always available, your attention is worth nothing. When you're selective, your attention becomes a prize, and everyone wants to win a prize. Think about the people who attract you most in life. Are they those who agree with everything you say? Who are always free when you call? Who never have their own opinion? Of course not. The most magnetic people in your life are those who have strong personality, who have clear boundaries, who you can't easily control. He noted one of the most misunderstood truths in history. It is better to be feared than loved. But he wasn't talking about being cruel. He was talking about being respected, about having boundaries that people know they shouldn't cross. When you always say yes, you teach people to disrespect you. You show that your opinion doesn't matter, that your time is worthless, that you don't value yourself. And if you don't value yourself, why would they? But when you start saying no, something magical happens. People stop taking you for granted. They start valuing the moments when you say yes. Your attention becomes special because it's limited. Do you agree with this or think it's weak talk? I want to see your argument in the comments. But how to make this transition? How to reprogram years of mental conditioning without destroying your relationships? How to stop being a people pleaser without becoming a bad person? Stop looking for the magic formula. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission to start respecting yourself. Transformation begins with a brutal decision. Will you continue living to please others, or will you start existing for yourself? 3 different perspectives converge to the same truth. Deep psychology, social analysis, and political observation all point out that authentic people need courage to disappoint. The first said that individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, requires you to abandon the social mask, that you stop trying to be perfect for everyone and start being real to yourself. The second observed that true freedom begins when you stop running from the responsibility of your own choices. When you accept that you can't please everyone and that this is perfectly fine. The third discovered that real power doesn't come from being loved by all, but from being respected by those who matter, from having principles for which you're willing to be misunderstood. The practical technique is simpler than you imagine, but harder than it seems. Start small. Next time someone asks for something you don't want to do, take a deep breath and say, "I need to think about it." Just that. You're not saying no. You're buying time to feel what you really want. Then, when you're alone, ask, "If I say yes to this, will I be betraying something important in me?" If the answer is yes, you already know what to do, but there's a final discovery about this process that changes everything. A truth about what happens when you finally stop betraying yourself. There's a fundamental difference between being selfish and being authentic. The selfish person thinks only of themselves, completely ignoring others. The authentic person understands they can only give their best when they're being true to themselves. Jung lived this firsthand. At 38, he broke with Freud, his mentor and intellectual father figure. It was a brutal decision. Freud was powerful, respected, and Jung depended on him professionally. But Jung realized he was betraying his own theoretical convictions to maintain Freud's approval. The break was costly. Jung was isolated by the psychoanalytic community. He lost prestige, lost followers, lost financial security. But something extraordinary happened. Free from the need to please Freud, Jung developed his most revolutionary theories. The concepts of collective unconscious, archetypes, individuation, everything emerged after he had the courage to disappoint who he most admired. Fromm did something similar. In 1933, when the Nazis rose to power, he had to choose: stay in Germany and adapt to the regime to maintain his career, or exile himself and lose everything. Fromm chose exile. He lost his position, his home, his native language, but he kept his integrity, and it was in exile that he wrote his most impactful works on freedom and authenticity. Machiavelli also faced this choice. When the Medici regained power in Florence, he could have bowed, flattered the new rulers, betrayed his republican principles to maintain his political position. Instead, he maintained his stance. He was exiled, tortured, humiliated, but it was in this forced exile that he wrote The Prince, the work that would make him immortal. See the pattern? Each of them faced the same choice and reached the same conclusion. When you stop betraying yourself, you don't lose power. You find your real power. Because authenticity is magnetic. Authentic people attract other authentic people. They inspire, they influence, they lead. When you stop trying to please everyone, something magical happens. You attract the right people and repel the wrong ones. Manipulators lose interest in you because they can no longer control you. And genuine people start approaching because they feel they can be themselves in your presence. The truth is, you're afraid of being rejected for being who you are, but you're already being rejected every day. Rejected by yourself. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you're rejecting yourself. Every time you hide your real opinion, you're abandoning yourself. What part hit you the most? The one you felt in your stomach? Comment with honesty. Now you've seen a bit of what makes this philosophy so impactful. Click on the video on screen. You'll discover how to apply these principles to gain respect without needing to say a single word. Click now on the video on screen.